Hey everyone, it's me, Matt. Welcome back to my channel. As always, I hope you're all doing great, and I hope you're ready to garden with me today because in today's video, we're going to be transplanting the white Gaura and dark blue and light blue Scaevola fan flowers out of my front porch seasonal flower bed and into my front yard and backyard landscapes. So let's get into it. So turning you around, here's my front porch seasonal flower bed area. You can see I've got some Gaura plants planted toward the back and some Scaevola fan flowers planted here toward the front. I planted this garden bed back in June of last year and it looks stunning all through summer and into early fall. All of these plants are actually perennials in my area. They overwintered beautifully and I wanted to get them transplanted out of this garden bed before they really started waking up for the spring season. So let me show you where I'm going to move them all. So looking at this garden bed on the right side of my front yard, I wanted to transplant a lot of them into this space. I figured I'd plant all 5 white Gaura plants in the area between my driveway and the yellow bush daisies toward the back. I think they'll add some nice height with their taller bloom spires. You can see I'm currently getting height from the lavender blooms on my lyre-leaf sage plants, but those will all fade in the next month or so, allowing the Gaura to be the star of the show. And then I also thought I'd tuck some of the dark blue and light blue Scaevola fan flowers into this area too. Their blue color will look great with all the yellow coreopsis flowers I've already got planted in this space. The addition of the Scaevola and Gaura will definitely transform this area into a beautiful flower bed full of color. Moving over to the left side of my front garden, I thought I'd transplant some of the Scaevola fan flowers to fill the gaps in this garden bed. I actually had some tropical sages planted toward the front that I recently moved toward the back of the bed. The sages get really tall and I didn't want them so close to the grass line. I think the low growth habit of the fan flowers will be a much better fit for this space. And then I also wanted to tuck some here around the base of my bird bath. At the moment, this flower bed is looking really bare. The yellow gaillardia that I originally planted here didn't make it, so this garden bed has been in desperate need of some new colorful plants. Moving into my backyard, I thought I'd transplant some of the fan flowers on either side of the pathway in my fruit and vegetable garden area. Also, check out how big my tomato plants have gotten. They're all doing so well. I think the addition of the fan flowers will do a great job at attracting more pollinators into this space, and hopefully I'll have a huge tomato harvest later on this year. So now let's head back to my front yard and we'll start digging up all my transplants. Alright, so we're about halfway done. It's been pretty easy. I've only had to use my hand shovel and it's been pretty quick work. You can see I'm piling up my plants on some butcher paper, trying my best not to make a mess. So let's get back in there and we'll dig up the rest. All right, we got everything cleared out of here. I've got all my plants laid out. Like I said, I've got 5 white Gaura plants, and then you can see I've got about 24 fanflower plants. You can see one of them has a single bloom on it. You can also see why it's called a fanflower. The flower looks like a hand fan. So now let's move on to transplanting these plants. We'll start with the Gaura, and then we'll move on to the Scaevola fanflowers. There we go. All the Gaura's been planted in. They're dotted throughout this space. They're going to do great here. This is a well-draining full sun garden bed, so they should continue to perform really well in this space. Also, I did want to mention I used some slow release all-purpose fertilizer when I planted them in. It'll give these transplants a big boost of energy as they root into their new homes. I'm going to follow the same process using the fertilizer with my fan flowers. So let's get those planted in the ground now too. So there we go, all the fan flowers have been planted in. Looking here at my driveway garden bed first, I planted quite a few throughout this space. I did my best to fill a lot of the gaps in the mulch. These plants have about an 18-inch spread, so they should cover a lot of the exposed areas. Looking over here on the left side of my front garden, you can see how I tucked some in to fill the gaps too. In the next few weeks after rooting in, they're going to start spreading over these mulch areas, and I can't wait because it's going to look so good. Also, can we take a minute to admire my front flower beds? They've really started blooming like crazy this week. I just love all the white and purple colors. These flowers are stunning. If you remember, I planted these garden beds in back in November. The majority of these plants were tiny little 4-inch plants, and in only a few months they've grown so big, they've put on so much size, and they're covered in blooms. So moving on to my bird bath flower bed area, you can see my newly transplanted fan flowers starting at the base of my bird bath, and then they kind of swoop around the back of my drift of dwarf white paintus flowers. I just cut these paintus back for spring a few weeks ago, so they don't look like much, but you can see they've already started pushing so much new growth. They're looking great, and I can't wait for this garden bed to really fill in again. And then coming into my backyard, you can see where I planted a few fan flowers in this space. I've got one here, here, and over here. They're definitely going to add some much needed color into my fruit and vegetable garden area. So over the next few days, I'm going to monitor all my new transplants and make sure their root balls stay moist. This will help make sure they don't go into transplant shock as they root in. My entire front garden is on drip irrigation, so that'll help, but I'll need to hand water all the transplants in my back garden since those ones aren't hooked up to any irrigation. Again, the most important thing is to make sure their root balls are watered and that they don't dry out. And then after a couple of weeks, once they've settled in, I'll switch to a normal watering schedule, making sure they're watered about 2 to 3 times per week. And then really quick, I wanted your input on my front porch seasonal flower bed. Now that it's all cleared out, it's ready for a spring makeover. So let me know down in the comments what flowers you think I should plant here next. So that's a wrap with today's transplant project. I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already done so, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons so you can hang out with me in future videos. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.